Okay, we're looking at how to factor simple trinomials. These are the ones that have the form of 1x squared plus bx plus c, or just x squared plus bx plus c. There's no other coefficient in front of that x squared other than the 1, and that's what makes them simple. All we need to do is find two numbers that will add to the b term, or the coefficient of x, and multiply to the c term, or the constant term. So if I look at this first example, I'm looking for two numbers that are going to add to 8 and multiply to 15. So that's supposed to be an m here and an a first. So we're looking for two numbers that will add to 8 and multiply to 15. And I think 3 and 5 will do that. 3 times 5 is 15, 3 plus 5 is 8. Now, because it's a simple trinomial, we can take those two numbers and directly put them in the brackets to factor. Now, trinomials of this form will always be the product of two binomials. And in this case, it's going to be a binomial of x plus 3, and our other binomial will be x plus 8. And you can always expand and simplify that to check and make sure. X times x is x squared, x times plus 8 is plus 8x, plus 3 times x is plus 3x for a combination of, I made a mistake there. That should be a 5. See, good thing I checked. So there's a 5x plus a 3x, that's the 8x, and then 3 times 5 is the 15. Okay, looking at the second example here, part B, I'd be looking for two numbers that are going to add to -5 and multiply to 6. So because I'm multiplying to a positive, I know that the two numbers have to have the same sign. This time I'm adding to a negative. It means they both have to have negative signs with them. So I think a -2 and a -3, they multiply to be positive 6 and add to -5. So your factored form here should be an x minus 2 times an x minus 3. All right, next one. This time we're multiplying to a negative. So we're multiplying to a -14. That means the two numbers are going to have opposite signs, multiplying to -14. And because we're adding to a positive 5, the bigger number is going to have the positive sign with it. So I'm thinking 7 and 2 will multiply to 14. If I made that a positive 7 and a -2, that's going to add to positive 5. So my factors will be x plus 7 and x minus 2. Okay, and for example D, we're looking for two numbers that are going to add to -3 this time and multiply to -18. So I need my two numbers to have opposite signs, and the larger one to be the negative. And I'm thinking -6 and positive 3 should multiply to -18 and add to -3. So that gives us a factor of x minus 6 and another factor of x plus 3. Okay, again, this only works because they're simple trinomials. When we get to the tricky ones where we don't have a 1 in front of the x squared, like in example 4 here, then we have to do a little bit more work with those ones. So the process of finding two numbers that add, it will still be adding to the b term. So for part A here, it's going to add to positive 5, but it multiplies to the product of A times C. So I'm looking for two numbers that are going to add to 5 and multiply to positive 6. And then we do something called decomposition. Okay, so 5 and 6, I'm thinking 2 and 3, multiply. Now, I can't just go, and I'm going to write this down, but don't you write this down, x plus 2 and x plus 3. If I were to multiply those together, that only gives us a 1x squared, and what we need is a 2x squared. So clearly that's not going to work for us. So we have to use a different process here. Let me get rid of all this stuff here. Okay, so our different process this time is we take these two numbers that we get, and we are going to break down or decompose this middle term into those two pieces. We're going to put our 2x squared first. It gets copied down. The 5x really is the same thing as 2x's plus 3x's. So we're breaking that 5x down into those two pieces, and then we still have our plus 3 on the end. Now this question becomes like a grouping question that we just did in section B. So the first pair has a common 2x, so 2x is common. That leaves us with an x and a plus 1. And the second pair has a positive 3 in common. That leaves us with an x plus 1 when we divide it out. And now, like we had before, x plus 1 is common, the common bracket, and it leaves us with a factor of 2x plus 3. So these ones are trickier because we don't have a 1 in front of the x squared, and there's a little bit more work to it because we need to decompose them. Moving on to part B, we're looking for two numbers that are going to add to negative 19 and multiply to 5 times 12, which is 60 here. So the two numbers have to have the same sign because we're multiplying to a positive, and because we're adding to a negative, they have to have both negative signs. Both numbers need to be negatives. Now, this one gets a little trickier because not only is it a tricky trinomial, we're working with a pretty big number here. So for people who have trouble with their number facts, I mean the ones up above in part example 3, the numbers were fairly small and common numbers that we had to work with. Even 4a was small. We've got lots of options for 60. I mean, 1 times 60 equals 60, but that's going to add to negative 61 if I make them both negative. 2 and 30, again, that's going to add to negative 32. So not going to work for us. Negative 3 and negative 20, that adds to negative 23. We're getting closer here. How about negative 4? Negative 4 and negative 15, I believe, multiply to negative 60. They're going to add to the negative 19. So that's the pair we want. We can stop now that we found it. So we're going to get our 12x squared. I'm going to have a minus 4x. So the 19 is breaking down into these pieces, and then a minus 15x. They go together to be the minus 19. And then we still have our plus 5 on the end. We're going to pair up out of these two, a 4 and an x is common. So 4x is common to those. 12x divided by 4x is 3x. Sorry, 12x squared divided by 4x is 3x. 4x divided by 4x is 1, but we need to have a minus with that. Out of the next pair, I want my bracket to have a positive 3x. So if I have a minus 15x, I'm going to need to make that a minus 5. To get my minus 15x, and then a minus 1, so that my brackets are the same. A minus 5 and a minus 1 do multiply to positive 5. So those brackets are the same. We're going to have our 3x minus 1 as our common bracket, and it's multiplying 4x and take away 5. And there we have our factored form on that one. All right. Okay, so you can try the next ones. The last one in part F gets a little bit trickier, but really not a whole lot trickier. The only difference is it's got y squareds and xy. It's just when you break it down, it's going to be whatever xy plus whatever xy, and it will all work out similarly. So you might want to take a shot at these, and then you can watch the rest of the video for the take-up. Okay, looking for two numbers that are going to add to negative 29 and multiply, 35 times 6. That's 210. Eek, that's a pretty big number. Okay. I found my two numbers to be negative 15 and negative 14, and I put the 14 and the 6 together to take out a 2, and the 15 and the 35 together to take out a negative 5. So hopefully that one makes sense. The next example, we're looking for two numbers that are going to add to negative 20 and multiply to 100. I think negative 10 and negative 10 actually could do that one. And we can break that down and factor from there. Now, this one's kind of cool because it actually leads into the next group, which is factoring, or one of the next groups, factoring a perfect square. Because when you do this, the interesting phenomenon with this one is that, very slowly, I'm getting there, we're going to have, I missed a 2 there, we're going to have a 2x minus 5 as our common bracket, and then what we have left in our other bracket is another 2x minus 5. So we could leave it like that, or you might see the answer written, or you could write that answer as 2x minus 5 all squared. Okay, and writing it that way means we have a factor of order 2 because it has an exponent of 2 on it. All right, we have a adding to -1 and multiplying to -30 for this example. I found -6 and +5 would do that, and there I have my factored form. All right, this last one, I'm looking for two numbers that add to 13 and multiply to -30. And I think +15 and -2 will be my numbers for that one. Now this one, as I said, is a little bit different in terms of it has an y in the middle and then a y squared on the end, but overall your process will still be the same. So 6x squared, I'm going to put the minus 2xy, so that 13xy is really minus 2xy plus 15xy. So that's our sort of new thing there, and then minus 5y squared. I've got this all kind of crowded in here. And then if I pair up the first two, they can both be divided by a 2, and x is also common. That leaves us with a bracket of 3x and a minus y. And then out of the second pair, a plus 5y is common. And that leaves us with a 3x and a minus y again. So my two brackets are the same. So we can pull out that factor of 3x minus y. And our other binomial will be 2x plus 5y.